right, so we begin where we were just coming out of Steve's house after discovering his body laying in the middle of the floor. So from there, in a panic, I had gone back into the parts of the city where I could find a telephone to contact Bill, try and get him to get some of the local flat feet down here to help back me up while I try and figure out what's going on. Made the call from kind of a butcher shop slash thrift store where I picked up a couple boxes of blackjack to kind of help calm my nerves. Made my way back to Steve's house where I encountered two neighborhood kids, and through interviewing them, discovered that they had seen a ghost, or what one of them believed to be a ghost. And that was one of the O'Shaughnessy's, aka known as the Fist, if I remember correctly.
Mickey. Yep.
Mickey. But this vision of Mickey was much younger than what these kids knew to be the one who lived now. So it was a little disconcerting. Could be some confusion. It might just be one of Mickey's kids. After all, he does have quite a few. Gabriel Washburn shows up with a couple of officers. We have a conversation kind of at the car. I'm asking him to station the officers out. Also, fellow Treasury agent Kyle Winchester arrives, where I ask him to engage in questioning Mrs. Smith, the landlady of Steve, to see if there's anything going on there, while Winchester and I investigate inside the house. So we go in, I show Kyle the scene. I describe how I entered the building, how the body was originally discovered. I do show him the idol that I had found. And in the conversation with him, I disclose what I believe or have seen recently, placing an emphasis on his possible opportunity to make observations about, what was his name? John Malone. And that I believe...
You mean Washburn? You were talking to Gabriel Washburn.
Yeah, I was talking to Gabriel Washburn and asked him to make observations about Malone as to whether or not he can confirm or deny he is breathing.
Yes. Big risk.
We had a nice debate about the believability of that, but given my point of argument, foot in shoe in wall being a repeated phrase about how weird and unusual everything has been, I didn't think it was any stretch of imagination. Washburn then discloses to me about how a lot of the wounds from the crime scene where he was investigating or was involved in seem to be like giant crab claws or giant lobster claws, crushing type wounds, tearing type wounds.
Right, like a mechanical separator.
Like a mechanical separator. So we exchanged a little bit of information, probably realizing that we're both discussing something that we both believe to be a little beyond reality, that it's fantastical, but it's what we've got. They're not facts, but this is what we observe. I've collected a little bit of information about the crime scene. Before it was destroyed, the damaged shoe print is the only thing that lets me know someone else besides the landlady possibly was there, Steve was possibly there, and then the police officers and Washburn were there.
Right.
The meat wagon shows up. Creepy forensics guy takes photos.
Yeah.
Body is taken away. From there, I have the final part of the conversation with Washburn, kind of what I believe my next steps are going to be. If he discovers anything, just keep me in the loop. I would have also kind of alluded to the fact that this is not an official Treasury investigation. This is personal, but I am keeping the ties of the O'Shaughnessy and Morgan Co. conflict and the transferring of territory, the still existence of bootlegging, smuggling, criminal operations as a way to trace money and other assets to keep that within the Treasury Department's purview. I did ask him also, or let him know at least, about my intentions to try and move through, depending on the success of the investigation or not, to move from the Treasury to transfer to the FBI, or the Bureau of Investigation, as it would have been called at this point in time.
Right.
Knowing that I've got a lot on my plate after having the conversation with Winchester, after speaking with Washburn, I then begin to start recruiting Kyle into our office to start being able to take over some of these research abilities while I do more of the shoe leather work. I'm the guy on the ground. Kyle would take over more in the research and leads department at the office. Once we split up, I then return home, kind of go through what has become recently a very standard operation for when I get back to my house, although not nearly as paranoid now. Although when I arrived, getting out of the car, I did notice that further down the street, there were signs of probably someone observing my home. So I still did enter the house with gun drawn, look around for any sign of entry or disturbance in the house. Once I discovered that it was safe, the guns go to where they have been, finding their new positions in my bedroom. And for the first time, I try and undress, but not looking and not having showered yet,
right,
lay down and try and get a good night's sleep before D-Day arrives, the date day. Right. I know that one of the prime witnesses or person of interest that I need to look up is this Edward Driscoll, this private investigator who is at the hospital, is quote unquote the only known survivor. So he is my next major point to kind of hit before I actually have to take a shower and look for what may or may not have happened to the tattoo.
So, morning comes swiftly. And with light streaming through the windows, it almost feels like there's a thaw in the air, even though, of course, winter is still steadily approaching according to the calendar. But the quality of light through the window lacks that gray, wintry, cloudy quality that it has for days and days and days leading up to today. The house is as quiet as the house ever gets, with its creaks and moans and that echoing emptiness of a large house with solo occupant.
So getting out of bed, just kind of put on the bathrobe. I will make my way to the bathroom, do a shave, look at the shower, decide that it's not time yet, go downstairs, quick breakfast, ham, eggs, toast and butter, black coffee. Time to brush the teeth. I make my way back upstairs to the bathroom, brush my teeth while I stare at the shower. Still got the bathrobe on, still got my white, undershirt on and boxers. With the toothbrushing done, start to take off the bathrobe, take off the shirt, try and fiddle with the hot water until, as you always do, manage to somehow get the right temperature, get into the shower, and I start looking for the tattoo. Is it anywhere visible on my chest, my arms, legs? At this point, if it's not there, then I know I'm going to have to go out, and wipe the moisture off the mirror and look and see if it's on my back.
Where do you look first?
On the chest. Look, that's the first place I would definitely look, is down at the chest area.
Right. So on the front, just looking down, nothing seems to be particularly different, but then you catch sight of a deeper shadow, not high under your arm, but on your side. Right.
Left side?
Close to the heart.
Okay.
The figure of the knight can be seen, mostly, charging as if coming around, the side of a mountain, right?
But it does appear to be stationary.
Yeah.
Does the tattoo waver or move in any way, or does it appear to be very static?
Seems to be a veritable part of your flesh.
As kids, our mothers told us that if we did what we were told, stayed out of trouble, and looked to good men and women as role models to better ourselves, we could achieve the American dream. It's hard not to wonder now, as the drought eats the heart out of the country and the dust delivers black blizzards and poor men beg for food while rich men fall from the sky. Did they know they were lying? Broken families, broken dreams, broken promises, moments of charity, holding off starvation for another day, so that suffering can carve deeper marks in the rag-clad children of destitute parents cowering in confusion in the shadows of well-heeled shot callers, for the gangsters and politicians, with the police taking money from both to keep the peace. Keep your nose clean. Keep it to the grindstone. Keep it out of others' business. The words of our mothers echo down the streets lined with ragged folk with tin cups praying for soup. Can anyone turn this free fall into flight? Is there an answer out there that brings sense to madness? Or do we keep swimming our way toward Asculum?
mean, I get cleaned up, comb the hair, got my clothes, suit hanging, kind of in the over the bathroom door. Get it up for the day, knowing that I've got the date later on tonight. So I'm going to make my way from the house. My first place that I will stop will be at the office. I check in with Bill.
Right.
So grab the Gladstone bag and everything else, all my notes and everything with me, and make my way there.
The fresh clothes feel good, smell good. Outside, the snow is largely melted, and it's going to be a beautiful day.
As I'm backing out of the driveway, I am going to turn down street, even if it might be in the opposite direction I would normally go, in the direction that I had seen this observer the day before or the night before, just to, mark an area in the neighborhood where I had seen somebody watching from. As to the best of my knowledge, I didn't give any indication that I had noticed them. Tried to be as calm and nonchalant as possible. So I just kind of want to see what they were using for a vantage point, and there make my way down to the Treasury office.
Right, well, like so many other streets, it's lined with trees down the sidewalk. And, the perspective, someone could simply stand there smoking a cigarette, staring off, into the night sky or whatever, and be completely invisible from your front porch.
Okay.
But very easily be able to gain a vantage of, are the lights on, are the lights off, is the car there, that kind of stuff.
So basically, from that vantage point, if I was doing surveillance, I could tell that, they're not looking for detail. They're just looking for occupation. Is the suspect home? Is that the kind of situation or spot we're in?
Or could simply have been the owner of the house standing out next to his trash cans smoking a cigarette.
Possibly, yes. Given my state of mind, I lean towards a little bit of paranoia right now. Okay, managed to get my way through traffic. I'm not taking any side stops or anything like that, just making my way straight to the office. I know one of the things I got to talk to Bill about when I get there is, hey, there's this guy, Kyle. He may be coming to the office. Just want to let you know what's going on. So I'm kind of piecing together in my mind, not distracted as a driver. And that would be one of the key things too, even though they know I'm a Treasury agent and where I work, while I'm piecing my morning together when I arrive at the office, I am going to be kind of checking mirrors, check the rear view, check side view, just to see if anybody maybe, once I get away from the house, maybe just kind of keeping a tail on me. And if I don't notice anything, arrive at the office, bright and shiny.
Well, let's actually take that one to the dice. Okay. So you are essentially trying to spot a tail. This is spot hidden, capped by your drive.
Well, luckily they are both the same thing. I'm looking in the mirrors, right, left, trying to keep my eye on traffic. But if there's somebody following me, I have not managed to pick out a car, which keeps.
You can have any color you want as long as it's black.
Yeah, that's right. Get to the office. I'm back to my usual self, well dressed, cleaned up, clean shaven. Hopefully I'm a little bit more clear headed when I walk in.
And the first words out of Bill's mouth, "Oh, thank God you had a shower."
I just kind of smirk. If I'm gonna clean myself up, wouldn't today be the day?
Today would be the today of all days, he says. There's a large red circle on his, life insurance desk calendar, circling today's fantastic date of Friday the 13th.
I kind of, when I see that I'm not realizing the actual date, I give a bit of a grimace, but still kind of smile a little bit afterwards, making my way to the desk and say, Bill, it's been a very long time since I've actually, socialized like this. So if I make a fool of myself, I want to apologize in advance. I'm kind of opening the Gladstone bag, getting the files out, starting to rearrange the desk. Oh, and by the way, I needed to let you know I've asked Kyle Winchester to join us in the office.
In this office?
I look around at the stacks and one of the desks in the corner, which is like a coral reef of stacks of files, papers, and bankers' boxes, and say, well, we've got the space.
Yeah, and besides, with my luck, today's the day. And he's looking at this, vast wall of papers. Today's the day. The wall comes tumbling down. But you're still going on the date if I'm taken out.
I will. I won't back out. If I make a commitment, Bill, on something like this, I'm going to show. Okay.
So you like the Winchester guy?
He's new. He's green. He's a little open-minded. He was willing to show up at an hour when I needed him. And thank you again, Bill, for contacting everybody. I really do appreciate that at that late hour.
It's what I'm here for.
So I'm getting all the paperwork out and kind of piling things up on the desk, starting to fill Bill in a little bit more on why I had called to have the backup, talk about Steve, kind of fill him in a little bit more about how I know Steve, where we hang out. I explained to Bill about the accounting books. And I believe that is the reason why he was killed. He was making backups. Somebody obviously knew or had gotten wind that he was doing this thing. He had passed a set of books to me. I have some accountants at my family's firm who have taken a look at them and made some notes for me. If you'd like to take a look at them and peruse through them yourself, you're more than welcome to. I kind of pull the books out, put them on on my desk. But I'm pretty sure that is the main reason why Steve would have been killed. Somebody knows that he's passed these on, and I tap the books. There's something in here, and if it's not at the surface where the accountants found it, it may take a deeper dive.
Well, that does sound interesting.
Making my way over to the map, kind of looking at that territory where the Morgans are located at, the former Shaughnessy territory. How much do we know, or what's going on and around the territory around where the O'Shaughnessys and Morgan are kind of located at? Not just inside that territory, because that's like a fortress down there. There's really only one or two ways in and out. And I haven't been back down there since the first day. I kind of want to keep my face away from there right now. But how much do we know about the territory that is next to it?
Under the O'Shaughnessy's, it was largely untouched, other than, being the occasional site of a pop-up speakeasy or whatever.
So just kind of like a borderland between the two. I mean, the speakeasy or two, that could be pretty common, but it's a little bit of a flop house area. I've seen that. but nobody really like lays claim to that territory. Is it considered like a neutral ground? Kind of, I'm at the filing cabinet kind of looking for anybody else who might be down there.
Right. The few gangs that the O'Shaughnessy's have allowed to be subservient to them and kiss the ring definitely have neighborhood territories in other parts of town, not around that central operations area.
So no family or connected group we might be able that's that close to them. Nobody we might be able to lay a finger on, or maybe somebody we've had
Well, I
engagements
mean,
with
that's
before.
this is the state of our intelligence as it stands now, and with this change of ownership, I think we can pretty much throw away everything that we knew about what I hoped would be a no man's land. But
I mean, I'm not so much interested in the past. It's more like what's happened since then. When did people, and maybe it's going to take having to go down there and talk to some neighbors. I kind of look at the desk where all the papers where we're going to stick Kyle at. Maybe that's something I can get Kyle to take care of.
yeah, he's a handsome guy. He might you know might get some
But
people
when
down
did
there.
people start noticing? That's more like what I want to start getting a pin on. When the whole Morgan Co. and their favorite, or the O'Shaughnessy's, got bumped, and the Morgan Co. moved in and redid the O'Shaughnessy's favorite place, that would have been something very noticeable. But it's what happened before that. What's the timeline? How close to the timeline is what I really want to get.
There's only one way to get information like that, and right now we don't have it.
Do we got anybody else we can really trust, Bill, in the departments?
Well, we've been meaning to recruit.
Recruit for the Treasury or recruit as informants or cohorts?
For the Treasury, to follow the successful model of the Chicago branch of Untouchables. We've been meaning to recruit, but well, I mean, you and I've talked about this before. We've been stonewalled by the fact that you and I both know that you can't throw a rock near a precinct without hitting a dirty cop.
And what do you think about Gabriel
Washburn?
Lieutenant Washburn? Is he someone we can really trust?
I've never really worked with him, but he does he strike you as a duplicitous individual?
Not really. He was definitely willing to show up at a late hour at the end of a long day to heap more problems on his investigation already. He was willing to share information between what he saw at the massacre scene.
Oh, your files are going to be here in an hour.
Well, hopefully, Kyle will remember and be punctual at some point. I look at the door. When they show up, it'd definitely be something you might want to go ahead and put Kyle on. We can just give him, that as the initial start. I hope you don't feel like I'm stepping on your toes, Bill.
No, you're finally doing your job.
I kind of roll my eyes. What? Come on, Bill. What's that supposed to mean?
Well, you're
step away from the map.
You keep looking at the door like you're waiting for Winchester to show up. He's been here since 7. He's back in the bullpen drinking what they claim is coffee, but I'm pretty sure they've been trying to poison me with
last night's leavings, huh? How many times they run on those grounds?
Maybe since Washington.
Fine, fine, fine. I kind of expected him to hopefully just show up here at the office and not just retain his place at the same desk. I mean, after all, if we're going to bring him onto the inside, it'd be nice to have him in here and not out there in the bullpen.
Sometimes it's nice to be asked. Haven't you ever been to a Sadie Hawkins dance?
I'm at this point, I'm like standing at the map and I'm kind of looking at it, and I just kind of slowly turn around and go, okay, Bill, I think I get the hint as I slowly start to walk towards the door. Open it up. I'm going to go get
You can
Kyle.
take the man out of Harvard, but you can't take Harvard out of the man.
I bring the door almost to a close and leave it open by a crack, just so I can hear any wisecrack he might still make as I'm making my way down the hallway to the bullpen.
He's just saying to himself, any minute now. Come on. Avalanche of the gods.
So as I'm making my way down the hallway to the bullpen, kind of I'm going to unstuffy myself a little bit. Undo the front of the coat. I'm not wearing vest, just got the shirt on, just got tie on. Kind of loosen the tie a little bit, undo the buttons in the front, as I make my way down to the bullpen to try and find Kyle.
Right. So it's a very narrow hallway. It's all lined with glass. It's very flimsy construction. Right? There are a couple of rooms that have been soundproof, such as the interview room. But most of this floor is just glass and very thin, wood paneling to create office space for the secretarial pool, for the operators and filing and whatnot. At the far end of the hall is where your band of Treasury agents, once finally recruited, would assemble. Right. So other than you and Bill, there are only 2 other agents thus far, Winchester being one of them. And Kyle is, as Bill mentioned, is already here. He has his cup holder full of sharpened pencils, and he's working on his typewriter to get it in prime shape. He has a stack of reports, and it looks like he's beginning to compile notes. So there's a set of files about the O'Shaughnessy territories.
And who is the other potential that's down here? You said there's 2.
Hasn't arrived yet.
All right. So walking up, Kyle, where's your compatriot at?
I'm pretty sure his clock is always about an hour behind.
Not punctual, huh?
Well, maybe he marches to the tune of a different drummer, but he went to Princeton.
That's smart. Princeton, huh?
Yeah.
It's probably about time we bring you into the office.
Oh.
And I look around at Princeton's desk and say, maybe it's an opportunity for Princeton to realize that it doesn't really matter where you come from, it's what you're doing.
I certainly learned that at my school. I'll pack up my desk and be right in.
You might want to leave the stuff here for now, because you're going to find that you'll need to organize the desk we're going to put you at before you bring more stuff into the room.
You're right. I forgot. Bill's office.
Yes. Bill's office.
Or is it?
So I'll escort him down the hallway. Huh?
Or is it Bill's office or is it our office?
I feel it's Bill's territory. He was there long before I was. I mean, I work for Bill, even though I head this part of the investigation. He's still the man I'm going to report to. Anything I find, or if I need someone who's got a more serious part of experience in the Treasury, and especially here in Boston, then I'm going to ask Bill.
Well, he certainly marked all the furniture.
Yeah, he's got a stack on everything in there. It's the law of flat surfaces, as they say.
So it's not that long a hallway, so you get there, and just as you're getting close to the doorway, you can hear Bill actually walking back to his desk, right? And you know it's Bill because it's a light step and then kind of a hollow wooden step
Okay.
as he gets back into his creaky chair and kind of groans with the discomfort. There's a heavy wooden clunk as he gets his leg back under the desk, and paper shuffling.
Kind of pushing open the door, I let, Kyle come in first. Maybe it's just the paranoia in me, but given the direction of travel that Bill might have had to make, does it look like anything in the room is an area where he had just recently spent some time reshuffling the stacks?
Not reshuffling. He has collected the documents that you mentioned about
Oh, okay.
the accounting firm, and he's just about to crack them open.
So Kyle comes in first. I'll follow him behind him, and I say, Kyle, welcome to the cave. And I, gesture over at the desk at the nearby corner office window area. If you manage to clear some of the windows, you'll have a wonderful view of the street. But feel free to start rearranging. Just try and keep some semblance of organization if you can. And I look at Bill, just start marking out your territory.
Winchester laughs good-naturedly, and he and Bill start talking about advice about where the stuff can go and who they can, bring in to cart it away and have it filed properly, and begin that conversation.
As they're discussing the reorganization, who might be able to take care of something like that, I kind of go over and put my hand on Bill's shoulder and say, what do you know about Princeton? Or specifically, that guy from Princeton who, by any notions of, by any notion of Kyle here, he seems to run a little late.
Well, don't knock him too much. He's been doing some stakeouts.
I look at Kyle, knowing that, from my previous conversation with Kyle the night before, that's kind of the same thing he was doing. Where was Princeton at?
Well, there have been some new speakeasies opening up, and we've been trying to ascertain if they're going through old stock that will then run out, or if they're already being supplied by these Morgan characters, if indeed these Morgan characters are going to be smuggling alcohol at all.
Yeah, we are really going to need to get a tail on what's coming in and out of that territory down there. Looking back at Kyle,
when the O'Shaughnessy's had it, and these gentlemen seem to be a smarter crew.
They're definitely well tailored. Looking at Kyle, what are your real impressions of Princeton? How committed is he to doing the job? And don't bullshit. Just give me the lowdown like you would anybody else. I go over and I close the door to the office.
This is going to sound like I'm shining you on, but I feel like he's probably good at the job. He complains a lot.
What's he complain about? The bullshit, the minutia, the cold feet, the walk-in, what?
Yeah, all that stuff that I think by this point he should have just accepted. This is the job. Some people find it funny. I don't.
I kind of just nod my head. I look back at Bill. How long's Princeton been with us now?
Almost 2 weeks.
2 weeks. Kyle, how about you? You've been here for a little while, haven't you, at least?
Well, three weeks.
Kind of looking at them both. Maybe we should give Princeton a couple of more surveillance chances. How close are these speakeasies and what areas are they in? Going back to our conversation earlier, Bill, looking over at the map, these areas around where the O'Shaughnessy / Morgan Co. is located, are they in the borderlands around there, or are they further away?
Alex, they're everywhere and nowhere. They're
pop-ups, Bill. I know that, but have we seen any that he may have recently been on surveillance that was in the borderland? If it's not, then it's not, but that's fine.
No, that's where I had Winchester.
So turning back to Winchester, when you're down there, you talk with anybody in the borderlands area, just outside of that territory, O'Shaughnessy and Morgan?
Honestly, on this map, it looks like a borderlands, but it's just, I mean, here it's housing of a sort, but all of this is factories, right? So it's docks, warehouses, factories, low rent housing for the factory workers, diners, this kind of stuff. And then we start getting in this direction, we start getting into better neighborhoods, and then down in this direction into worse neighborhoods, and then down in this direction, as you know, we're getting into the city center, and none of it looks separate in any way. So I don't know, I'm finding it uncomfortable to call it a borderlands. It's just, you're going to set up a speakeasy where there are people who can show up where they used to show up at their local pub.
Well, yeah. I mean, a gin joint can pretty much go into any building, but given the economics, yeah, you want to put it close to someplace where people could afford it.
Now, I've been in 2 where there was no alcohol at all. There was music, there was dancing, there were flashy girls, and there was a fine selection of tobacco products, but no alcohol.
No gambling?
And I've been in others. If there was gambling, I didn't find my way into it. There certainly were a class of people that you would consider would have enough cash for that. I've been in some others where I think they were, trying to rub their nickels together to breed them. And I would put the quality of alcohol in those places as life-threatening.
So bathtub gin.
That
maybe just run it up downstairs.
That would be giving it too much credit. And again, I don't know if this is because there was a cutoff in supply or not. I don't have enough information yet, and I haven't established any kind of underworld persona yet.
Well, I mean, it's one thing to make bathtub gin. It's not unusual for those who are really hard up to just use fuel. I mean, denatured alcohol is close enough. There's no additives in it yet that keeps somebody from drinking it other than denatured alcohol itself, going blind or mad. But what I'm really interested in when we're talking about this borderland area, I know I keep referring to it as borderland, but it's really the territory that's closest to the heart of O'Shaughnessy. Like, how close were you to there? How long? You've been here 3 weeks. You've been observing down there. When did you first start noticing a change inside, let's just call it the Morgan Fortress? That whole area, once you go down those streets where it's like there's only 2 ways in or out, when did you really start noticing? That's kind of one of the things I want you to kind of take a look at, how that neighborhood changed from the rundown slop that the O'Shaughnessy's were running, and when it really first started to correlate with when the Morgans took over, and how much of an effect it might have had on that area just outside of it. When did people start interacting with it differently? Did they feel more comfortable with the Morgans as neighbors versus the O'Shaughnessy's? I mean, come on. We know what the O'Shaughnessy's are like, right? So how much different is Morgan now treating his new neighbors? And how are the new neighbors treating Morgan? Because sooner or later, we're going to have to go back down into that territory and get a closer look. And I'd like to know what we could possibly expect once we get close. You know, are the natives friendly or are they restless?
Well, I've filed some reports already. They're shipping in all kinds of lumber. They're bringing in all kinds of paint. They're giving people opportunity, to do unskilled labor for food and skilled labor for money.
Kind of looking him dead in the face, and I say, yeah, he's turning out to be a really good Samaritan.
It's a huge change from the neglect that was present there before.
And what do your instincts tell you about what's going on down there? You got one big mobster guy who already had an established territory, and he gets taken out by this guy, potentially, who comes in, all happy and glad in the face. People are talking around, maybe he's the bee's knees down there, but what do your instincts tell you?
Revival preacher. And
not
the ones that are religious. The ones that blow through town, put up a big tent, get everybody crying, collect lots of money, and disappear in the night. That's my feeling.
Yeah, but he's definitely not collecting money. He seems to be spending a lot of it. I mean, I've been down there firsthand, and I've seen the work that's going on, and yeah, he is putting people to work. And I hate to say it, having met the man, he does seem very personable. Let me just say that. He wasn't hostile. He wasn't unfriendly.
Just my feeling. I feel like the painting and the renewal of all these rundown businesses and warehouses, I just feel like that's the tent going up.
I can see that. It's a good metaphor. So speaking of research, we've got a few cabinets of files that are going to be showing up from the massacre scene that just happened recently.
Oh, okay. You want me to go through those?
Put them on your list, yeah. In particular, we're going to be wanting to look for any connection between the O'Shaughnessy's, the Morgans, and possibly their interactions. The doctor, whose office where some of the massacre took place.
So he's now taking notes.
I'll pull out the newspaper clippings and some of the information about the book theft.
Yeah,
this may sound like a stretch, but I want you to kind of also see if there's anything that connects people who are in those files with anybody who is involved with the auction house.
Okay.
When you get a chance, go ahead and just finish up with the work you've already got. I know it's going to be fun, but finish your reports for all your stakeouts and observations. Make sure we get that stuff done and get it filed away. Go ahead and start piling in on this. Today, I'm going to be going and trying to track down Eddie Driscoll, or that private investigator who seems to be the only survivor of the massacre.
You don't want any backup on that?
Kind of looking down at my watch. When do you say Princeton usually rolls in the door?
10-ish.
Kind of looking down at what time we got now. How long would it be for me to wait?
30 minutes.
Okay. Uh, so I'm gonna, kind of assist in the office here, getting everything, helping Kyle move his boxes in. I'm gonna kind of slowly drag the process a little bit because what I want to have happen is I want to have. So what I'm doing is I'm helping Kyle get the space organized first, right? So he can move his stuff in. The timing that I want is I want Princeton to see us moving Kyle out of the bullpen and into the office.
Okay. Yeah. So as a side effect of this project, Bill somewhat gleefully notes the not so subtle effect that Winchester's height, musculature, chiseled face has on the secretarial pool.
Well, it's good to know Kyle's a looker. I mean,
And when
next to
Princeton,
plain Jane that they've been staring at all this time.
when Princeton finally rolls in, a fact made more interesting by the fact that his family name is Prince.
Oh, great. Okay.
Now, he doesn't look like he spent all night on a stakeout, and he doesn't smell like it either. He doesn't have that boozy smell to him. Right?
Hanging out.
He's clean shaven, hair's neat, suit's clean, shirt's pressed. Collars are starched. Ties up. He comes in and doesn't really pay much attention to what's going on in any other offices. He's just walking down the hallway, but then has to stop because of the procession of files going this way and files going that way.
So when he stops, what's his initial reaction when he sees what's going on? Does he seem indifferent?
Yeah, there's not much of a reaction on his face. He's observing boxes of files moving in and out of Bill's office. So he's just patiently waiting for people with this heavy load to clear a space.
Clear space.
But as one of the secretaries struggling under a load that contains file boxes, he leans in, as a gentleman should, to take the boxes. He did not do this for the young lady who is trying to carry a stack of papers with her, bracing it against her chin. But he did sweep in to take the more easily transferable box of files.
Okay. So he seems pretty indifferent, if non-responsive, when he sees either Kyle or myself moving inventory from the bullpen into our office, and him seeing Kyle coming in and out of the office.
Well, you might be able to provoke him to get more of a reaction.
No, I'm not. What I'm trying to observe is his natural reaction, unprovoked, given the situation, even though the situation is staged.
Pretty good poker face, or doesn't care.
Okay. So, eventually he's going to be able to get a chance to pass when I'm in the office with Kyle and Bill. So, I really need to get started on trying to track down this Driscoll character. So, given what we've seen, I know Princeton, and really, and I don't want to be offensive to the guy, but what is his name? I don't really want to call him Princeton. I
Oh.
mean,
So Bill says, I'm sorry. It's just the, I have so few pleasures in life, Alex. Sitting here in the office, waiting to die.
so Prince is his last name, right?
Tyler Prince.
Tyler Prince. I'm going to take Tyler with me.
Okay.
I'll gather a few items of easily accessible note that Bill has probably already seen before, like some of the newspaper clippings, anything that isn't necessary for the kind of stuff that he's doing or kind of stuff that Kyle's doing. Compile all that stuff together in the Gladstone bag, along with the notes that I have not passed along yet about the idol, anything from the notes of the conversation with that I had with Gabriel, and tighten up the suit, buttons done. Kind of check the weather outside. We're starting to get a little bit more on into the mornings. Still looking like it's going to warm up to be a decent day.
Definitely.
All right. So still might brace for a little bit of wind or something. So I'll take the long coat with me, get ready, make my way back down the hallway to the bullpen.
Right. Bill's voice floats after you down the hallway saying, back here by 6, 5:30 if you can swing it.
Checking my watch just to make sure I'm not behind on time or anything. I haven't managed to lose track. I'll be there, Bill. Get into the bullpen. And before I walk in, I'm just going to stand back away from the bullpen just to make some observations about what Tyler is doing when he gets into the office, how he's starting his day. I just want to get a feel for him, given what I've heard about him so far, before I form any further notions about who he might be.
So he's hunched. He's a big man. He's hunched over typewriter, staunchly two-fingering his way through his notes, which seem to be written in cipher.
So kind of as I'm standing at the doorway, and I'm able to see this script.
Yep, he's got it propped up on his desk, leaned up against his coffee cup. And it's symbols. Doesn't look like shorthand or anything like that. It's symbols.
So from the doorway, I'll say, it's interesting steno you got there. Did you do any work in the courts beforehand?
Yeah, and cryptography is a hobby.
Hobby, huh? Do you find yourself as someone who likes puzzles?
No, I hate them, which is why I work so hard to solve them. And he turns
So
around.
you've been in the office. You've been in the office 2 weeks, huh? How are you finding it so far?
Pretty dark. I've been working nights most weeks trying to get a feel for, as Bill puts it, the colorful underworld life of Boston.
Well, usually that's black, white, and red. Usually, at least that's the way the headlines paint it. How much work do you have left to do today on that?
Oh, this is days of observations to type up. I can read this just as fast as I can read English. It's not necessary if I need to give a verbal report, but for typing it up for others, it'll take me quite a while.
Kind of getting a little closer to the notepad. So is this something of your own invention? Your own shorthand?
This one is, yeah.
What did you study at Princeton?
Well, I started out in philosophy, got disillusioned by the notion of determinism, went into law, got disillusioned with the practice of law,
Did you want to be a lawyer, or did your family push you there?
Um, no, I wanted to be a lawyer. And then I wound up studying mathematics.
Kind of walking around the bullpen a little bit and just kind of taking a look at the whole area. You mind fancying taking a break from the typing work today? Is that something we can do? I'm gonna need some help.
Yeah, the rest of my fingers need some exercise.
So as we, I say, go ahead, get yourself together.
I'm
I
ready.
would
He just
suggest
stands up.
going, you know, kind of looking around. Can I tell that he's wearing a firearm? Is one of the things I'm looking for.
He is not wearing a firearm.
Where's your handle at? Where's your gun?
Ah, I keep it in a lockbox at home.
You do know that usually if someone on the outside finds out you're a Treasury agent, it kind of makes you a bit of a target, right?
It's true, but I figure that they're a gang and I'm one guy pretending not to be me. And the odds of me hitting a bystander in that kind of situation are pretty high. So I haven't been wearing it as I've been undercover.
And do you think of yourself as a good shot? Do you get to the firing range much?
I practice diligently, sir. I'm no sharpshooter, but I qualified.
I kind of, nod my head and say, well, neither am I. I'm a decent shot myself, but thankfully it hasn't really come up in the past recent months. Kind of putting the Gladstone bag on his desk a little bit, just kind of open it up, pull out the newspaper clipping about the massacre. Say, so what I need your help on is we're going to be going and trying to track down the one Edward Driscoll. He's a private investigator, supposedly the
Yes,
only
sir.
survivor of this incident. Are you familiar with kind of what's happened already?
I have read the newspaper reports, and I heard Bill screaming about it into the phone for most of the
That
day.
would, yeah. It was a pretty bad scene. So I take it your firearm's not here.
I don't live very far away, sir, if you'd like me to retrieve it.
I would feel much more comfortable, given the nature of some of the business that we may be conducting today, that if we do need to defend ourselves as officers of the Treasury, that you keep your firearm on you at all times.
Do you feel that violence is imminent?
Violence is an uncertainty that you really can't prepare it for. So it's more or less better to have than not.
Well, that's, I guess, the crux of my question, sir. Would you like me to come loaded for bear or just loaded?
Just loaded. Not expecting you to bring out the Tommy gun or the shotgun or anything. And I kind of smile a little bit. We're not going to do a drive-by or anything. This is just an interview. But from personal experience over the past few days, I have noticed that given the line of investigation I am on, I am probably under observation. And given that a good friend of mine was recently discovered murdered, the potential for violence is there, but the level of violence is uncertain.
My condolences. So,
well, I appreciate that. I do. So if you're ready, I can go ahead and, let's go down to my car. We'll swing by your place, pick up your piece, and then we'll try and track down this Driscoll character at the hospital.
Yes, sir. There's no way on earth this man did not come up through military boarding school.
So does he have a kind of disciplined nature to him where he is
extremely, yeah.
once we get, I'm not going to really try and engage him in conversation on the way to his house. I want to see where he's at, where he lives, the kind of neighborhood he's in. Once he gets back in the car, and I'm not going to follow him in. I don't want to, impugn on the guy's house, not even as a fellow officer. But when he gets back in the car and we're making our way to the hospital where Driscoll's at, I am going to ask him, so what brought you into the Treasury? Did you come out of the military? Did you go to officer school?
Yes, sir.
I look at him again when he says, sir, you're not in the military now. Right now, you and I are just working together on some leads. And while I know I've been in the office a little longer than you, I'd like to think of you as a little more than just an associate, okay? In this line of business, we need people we can trust and people who are friends. Do you understand that?
Understand. Sir, when I call you sir, it's just respect I feel you deserve. I haven't saluted.
I appreciate it. I do. But you and me, we got first names, and that's the kind of basis I'd like us to be on. Can we start there?
Certainly. I believe you're Alex.
That's right. And you are Tyler.
That is correct.
So just kind of really kind of feeling him out as we get to I'm what I'm waiting for at some point, giving the history in the Ivy Leagues, if he knows anything about me that he may comment on, or if he tries to bring that into part of the conversation. I want to see how much he's going to pull on the family name, the school he went to. I mean, because between the Harvard Reds, the boxing team, and Princeton, there was at its start a pretty good rivalry. So I just kind of want to get a feel for him in the conversation. If his nature is
right,
I'm going to pull like the dilettante and use my influence or my station.
Right. So he's trying to get comfortable. Like I say, he's a big man. He's trying to get comfortable in the car, and he's wearing twin shoulder holsters, and they're rigged for crossbody, of course, being shoulder holsters, but not a vertical draw, a horizontal draw, so that they take up a fair amount of space inside his coat. And he's trying to get comfortable with them. So obviously he doesn't really wear them.
Yeah, he's uncomfortable with the guns in his pits, huh?
And as he gets comfortable, and you're talking to him and he's kind of drifting toward the monosyllabic response, right? He does start a little nervous twitch or tick or something. He's rubbing the two knuckles on his right hand. He's got some well-conditioned hands, you'd have to say. Not conditioned for like an advertisement for rings, but conditioned for speaking their mind in the ring.
Okay. So where do you work out?
I haven't been able to find a gym yet, sir. I was hoping that was something that I could impinge upon you to help me with. Excuse me, are you the same Thornton?
What do you mean the same? I've always been the same.
Very funny. Well, at least you perceive that you've been the same. But I mean, the boxer from Harvard.
I am. I was on the Harvard Reds team.
Oh, I thought you'd be taller.
They always say that about people from my certain class of family. But nah, I'm more the guy who doesn't like to be at the end of the punch. At least that's how people always saw me in the ring.
Right. I heard. What did they call you? It wasn't slippery, something like that.
Well, if you want to be a jerk about it, they always kind of called me greasy.
Greasy. I think I'd stick with slippery.
I would too. And I kind of smile. It's a little cleaner anyway, isn't it? But yeah, there is a gym. Been going to for quite a while, just next door to Harvard. But they're always looking for new people to come down. So, I kind of give them the address, let them know where it's at and located. They keep some pretty long hours. There's usually enough guys in there you can get a workout with. It's a pretty conjovial place. A little bit rough around the edges, though. Given where you went to school, even for someone like myself who's grown up here, still can be a little rough around the edges for guys like us.
Well, I mean, that's what keeps you sharp, right?
As I'm kind of making the corner, as we're getting closer and closer to the hospital, kind of saying that's what one's hoping for, is to stay sharp the whole time.
So, you guys promoted Miskatonic?
Promoted?
Yeah, Winchester.
Yeah.
I mean, he says he started at Stanford, but he graduated from Miskatonic, right?
Let's just say we're giving him a shot. What about you? How do you feel about moving up in the ranks?
Well, I think that's something I definitely want to earn. But I got to get the lay of the land first, sir.
So as we're kind of pulling into the hospital's parking lot, I kind of look over at him and say, philosophy, huh? Well, let's just say, in an effort to kind of prepare you for the type of conversation we may be having with Driscoll, that this is not going to be the most level of land that we're going to walk on. You may have to expand your philosophy, as it were, when we begin to discuss some of these subjects. How religious are you, if at all?
Well, I go to church on Sunday like most everybody else.
I know when I was studying law, we had to do logic and debate, developing a course of persuasion in a courtroom. I know one of the things that always kind of helped me to kind of break away from that was mythology, studies of religion. So how far did you go in that direction? You say determinism was something that turned you off. So you more of a kind of a free will guy?
He smiles, the very first smile. I like to think if I have a choice, I would choose free will.
You ever been in a situation where you felt like whatever you did was kind of preordained? Like things just happened the way they were supposed to happen?
Pretty much until I reached the age of majority, sir.
Alex, I kind of look at him.
Alex.
Have you ever been in a situation where the coincidence of both your environment and your intent seem to coincide in a point of synchronicity? And here I'm really trying to push his understanding of the difference between free will and determinism. We're talking about a philosophical gray area here, do you understand, where these things collide.
I believe, Alex, that we start as a blank slate and our options are truly open. And each choice, while it creates choices, it also limits choices. And because we have choices, this doesn't mean we have choices that we will make. They're simply choices we could make.
Okay.
Choices we would refuse to make.
Have
I felt like I've been in a place where my free will and yet everything that sums me up collide to give me the choice of no choice? That was when I entered this profession.
So he's saying this as I'm pulling into the parking space, and I've got the car off, and I'm at this point I'm giving my full attention to him. I make it very apparent that I am interested in what he is saying. Well, good, because chances are an experience like that may or may not be somewhere in your near future. And I'm saying this as I get out of the car and I'm kind of brushing the front of my coat, where the tarot card is being kept, very much on the same side as to where the tattoo is, and make our way into the hospital.
Okay. Under your fingers, you feel the card, you feel the coat, you feel the warmer breeze, you see the melting snow, and the glistening sheets of water spreading across the muddy parking lot. Upstairs, in a ward filled with accident victims, right? Broken legs, broken arms, right? People in all sorts of painful positions, fully plastered, right? Is a gentleman easily recognizable from numerous photographs in the newspapers of Edward Driscoll. And he's dozing or just has his eyes closed, and he's near the middle of the ward, and his head is very tightly bound.
So we haven't fully approached the bed yet, just noticing where his location's at in there. Kind of before we fully enter the ward, I'm going to turn to Tyler and say, so in discussions with Lieutenant who is on this case, the descriptions of the wounds are those of something akin to mechanical separation.
He gives you a look, a very direct look.
I give the direct look back to him. In candid conversation with the officer, we both understand that there's no way, given the location of the crime scene, that mechanical separation would have been possible. How familiar are with the report on what actually happened?
Not at all.
Have you read anything closely on it?
Had an opportunity to read it.
Here are my observations. If you haven't ever been to an abattoir, that's pretty much what it was like. Blood everywhere, up and down, on the floor. Bodies are strewn everywhere.
You mean that it's not likely they were killed elsewhere and transported?
No, this whole scene happened at the location. Couple of very important facts, though. Bullet holes were not only found in the walls, but also in the ceiling, meaning that either someone lost control of a firearm, was firing into the ceiling, but given the trailing and path of the bullet fire, it seems more like someone may have been firing from a on the floor or crouching position. The nature of the wounds and breakages usually due from mechanical separation. Say if somebody got their arms cut in a meat grinder, are very much like that. But these crushing wounds in arms and legs, and then the pulling of these limbs, suggest a very up-close and personal confrontation, which seems unlikely, but given the fact this has happened. Most notable of all, outside the bloodshed and the massacre is a foot found in a shoe stuck in a wall. Now, I don't mean as if someone kicked their foot into the wall. And I look him deadpan in the face and I say, as if it were part of the wall. So I want you to rely on your philosophy background as we begin to kind of question Mr. Driscoll about his experience. I'm not asking you to believe anything he says. I'm not asking you to buy into what we're investigating or what I am investigating, but I am asking you to keep an open mind.
Well, on the surface, these details sound preposterous, which forms an intriguing puzzle.
As we begin making our way towards Driscoll's bed, I kind of turn to him and say, just wait till I tell you about the story of the ghost, the fist. And before he can say anything, arrive at Eddie's bed.
Right. So Eddie is not asleep. That's pretty obvious. But there's nothing to look at. So his eyes are closed.
I'm sure he could probably hear the sounds of what are obviously not hospital footsteps drawing close to his bed. So as we're getting there, and the clack, clack, clack of my shoes on the tile floor begins to alert him to my presence, I would say, Mr. Driscoll, are you awake?
Yes. Who could I inquire is asking?
My name is Alexander Thornton. I'm an agent with the Treasury, and I pull out my badge. And even if his eyes aren't open, I still open my wallet so that he could see it.
They're wide open.
I was wondering if you wouldn't mind if I asked you a few questions.
It would certainly break up the monotony.
Turning to Tyler, I say, this is Officer Tyler Prince. He will be taking notes as an outside observer of our conversation.
Okay.
And I would appreciate your candor and honesty while we have this. The first thing I do is I pull out the tarot card. Have you ever seen anything like this before?
Some kind of printing accident?
You could say that. The ink has definitely gone somewhere. I will say that.
No, first time, sir.
Are you familiar with the theft from the auction house? This book that was stolen, supposedly.
It was 3 books.
3. Is this a match set? Like in a series, like encyclopedias?
Well, in a way, you got to understand that I've actually been paid to be confidential about these books in order to recover them quietly. But I don't think it'll do any harm to tell you about the books, because a lot of that was in the newspaper, but a lot of it was not very accurate.
Well, I certainly wouldn't want to compromise your investigation. If it involves revealing informants or anyone assisting the investigation, I would hope you would keep that confidential and private. But any information you can provide me about the books themselves, their importance, would definitely be helpful.
He visibly relaxes. I mean, he's not an old man, but he looks hard used. And there are the signs all over him, even with all the bandages on his head, of his professional fighting career. And seeing him, like really seeing him up close like this, you realize that this Edward Driscoll is a former Golden Gloves. So there are the telltale marks, the cuts, and doesn't have cauliflower ears, but they're not the way that God initially shaped them.
Okay.
Right. So he visibly relaxes, right? And you can tell how tired he is and how close to the ragged edge he is. He's very grateful that you understand his simple point.
So the way we've kind of positioned ourselves just to kind of make sure that he is comfortable, we're at this point, Tyler and I are both sitting, having the conversation with him, or starting the conversation with him. I am not taking notes to give my full attention to him while Tyler uses his ability in free time to make observation as a third party.
So what you need to understand is there are 3 separate leather books, but the contents of the books are the same. They're copies of the same book, and they're bound identically. There's really aren't very many ways to tell them apart.
No special material, tooling, decoration.
Not to tell them apart.
Okay.
Now, this is a old-fashioned book, like a Bible in a church, really thick and heavy. It's leather and wood, and there's an imprint in the cover of the title in Latin and that kind of thing, and they're
what's the title of the book?
Well, I don't speak Latin, but it's it's a VERMIS and then some like different spelling of mystery.
Burmese? Does that sound appropriate? Or
Vermis?
vermis?
I never heard it said.
Okay. What's the significance of these? What's the significance of these books? Why were they so important to steal?
My client, whose identity I cannot divulge, was very concerned about these books having been stolen from auction.
And that would have been the auction house that was owned by the Gavigans?
I couldn't say who owns the auction house, sir.
Is the Gavigans a name that you're familiar with? Particularly
Everybody,
Albert Gavigan?
Everybody knows the Gavigans.
But you've had no personal interactions with them.
I don't think I should say one way or the other. See, the books originally came from the Gavigan private collection, and they were put up for auction after attempts were made to steal them from the library on the estate, and that's a case I was also associated with, but no successful resolution was made to that case.
And from there, what led you to become involved with the incident that occurred just a few days ago? Massacre.
he flinches like like a punch is coming in, right? Then he's like opening his mouth and closing his mouth. Right? And finally, from the very depths, right, he drags out an answer, which is just to say, I was just there.
Wrong place, wrong time.
It's my place, but at the wrong time.
Did you know about your neighbor, the doctor? His involvement in the past, accusations of abductions. Did you have close relations with him?
I never believed. And I think maybe if you met him, you wouldn't believe it either.
I nod my head. I say, I have something else that I would like to show you, and I would appreciate it between two professionals if we could keep it between ourselves.
That's what I'm known for.
Look at Tyler, open the Gladstone bag, and I reach in and I put my hand around little clay idol. You ever seen anything like this before?
Edward Driscoll. Over 6 feet tall. Over 200 pounds. Fat over muscle now, but still huge, meat packer hands, right? Hard face. He starts screaming at the top of his lungs.
I immediately put it away. When you say scream,
terror.
Is this just a terror?
Terror. Okay. He's kicking at the bottom of the bed to try and, get away.
It immediately goes back into the bag. If I have to drop it down into the bag, I just kind of let it go and slowly rise to my feet as he's screaming and I expect nurses and other people to show up.
Yeah, the whole hospital's coming to life. Like, all the other patients are looking, the doctors are running, nurses are running. What have you done to this man?
As they're kind of probably running up, I'm not going to try and grapple with the man or do anything like that, but I am trying to bring on a visage of calm and collectedness as I kind of try and reach out my hand to just touch his hands, which he may be putting up, and I'm
against the mattress.
Just to make, what I'm going for is a chance to make just physical human contact with him as I'm speaking slowly, trying to persuade him to calm down. Right. You are okay. You are in the hospital. You are among friends.
So you hear the doctors coming. You hear the nurses shouting. You see all the shock spreading out like ripples, out of the corner of your eye all around, right? And it's no difficult feat to grab. His arms are bare. You can make contact, flesh on flesh.
Yeah, just touch it, no grab it.
Instant that you do, right? He grabs onto you like a drowning man, right?
Like trying to maintain eye contact with them,
Right. And he's pulling you in by lapels and whatever he can grab as close as you can get, right? And he's begging you, tears and tearful voice crying, right? Please don't kill me. Please don't kill me. Please don't kill me. Just over and over and over and over again. And then the wave of doctors come in, and
if they attempt to shoo us away, we comply with the doctors. As we're kind of being moved away from
one of them does bed. Snap, don't go anywhere.
I look at him, the doctor who snapped. I say, "Are you his doctor?"
They're busy, right? And they bring up straps, and he's calling for cc's of something, right? And then
Okay.
orderlies come in and they're like leaning on it, and they're trying to sedate him.
Well, this action of trying to get him back down to a semblance of calmness is going on in the background. I'm turning to Tyler and I say, now do you understand why I said what I said before we came into this room?
Crystal clear, sir. Alex?
I say at this point, hopefully, and I kind of look at the doctor who had told us not to go anywhere. I say, I hope that is the doctor who probably has the most familiarity with Mr. Driscoll. We're going to be asking him some questions. What do you think of your observations so far? He's hysterical, right? How could such a... Did you study any psychology aside when you were at Princeton? Or was it just philosophy?
Just philosophy.
Do you think that there is something that has traumatized him so well that such an innocuously seeming object could drive him into such terror?
You know, he reminded me of a beaten dog.
He is a former Golden Gloves. He's used to beatings. But that, and I kind of look at him, that's serious mental trauma. Something has happened.
Well, you said he was the only surviving witness?
To the best of my knowledge. But you heard him say that he's on somebody's payroll that he's keeping confidential, right? So there means that there are other people involved. Just kind of continue having the conversation with him, waiting for the doctors and nurses to do what they need to do with Driscoll. And hopefully the doctor who, said, hey, don't go anywhere. Eventually, hopefully we get him to approach us. And we move away from the bed. We try and, leave and get to the door, but we're not leaving the room.
Tyler suggests, what do you think the odds are that this confidential client is the Gavigan family?
Well, it wouldn't be something to overlook. Chances are pretty high. He did say that the book was the subject of an attempted theft prior to being on the auction from their personal estate. Are you familiar with the Gavigan's family?
Just by reputation.
Has your family ever had any involvement and I kind of smile, I say, don't take this as an interrogation, but has your family ever had any involvement with the Gavigan's auction house?
No. I went to Princeton on a scholarship.
I kind of smile. Really? Turning back and looking over at where Driscoll's located, I kind of nodding my head. I say, good for you, Princeton. Good for you.
Yes, it was, sir.
And we just kind of wait patiently for them to do their thing.
So eventually the doctor does come over, and he's visibly trying to get to his proper hospital demeanor, but you can smell the anger. And what comes out is, what did you say to him?
Kind of looking around, I say, I didn't say, it's not so much what I said, it's what I'd shown him. Do you mind if we step out of this ward, doctor? Are you his physician?
Yes, I'm responsible for Mr. Driscoll. Yes. He just kind of gestures vaguely further down the hall, away from patients and nurses.
Mm-hmm. As we're getting towards this door and, he's kind of opening it, I do ask, are you a doctor of medicine or are you a doctor of psychology?
Medicine. This man was submitted to us with a pretty severe concussion, which had been left untreated. But once in our care, and we did learn traumatic situation in which he was found.
And I say, I apologize, doctor. My name is Alex Thornton, and I reach into my, vestment and pull out the badge. I'm a member of the Treasury. Was here to ask Mr. Driscoll some questions involving the incident that he was involved in, which may or may not be related closely to a few other events in recent past, to which the Treasury agency has been adjoined to. I didn't say anything to Mr. Driscoll. I see you would like to say something. Go ahead and let me know.
I'm just, as you have seen, he's not in any position to be questioned on the massacre, and he's being held here not only for his recovery but for psychological evaluation.
And I won't ask you any questions about his current state or his state upon which he arrived. It's pretty evident that Mr. Driscoll has suffered some severe trauma from his recent experiences. And I would like to respect the patient and doctor confidentiality.
Well, good.
And I do apologize for
what
causing...
What did you show him?
I kind of stop. It is a piece of evidence recovered from another crime scene for which I am trying to gain further reference on.
Well, that would be very helpful for his treatment and evaluation if you might tell me what that was.
I put the Gladstone bag on the table. I look over at Tyler, kind of, just nodding to him. I'll open the bag, put my hand around the object, little idol, look up at the doctor and say, you do understand that this is part of an ongoing investigation?
And so I shouldn't break the bounds of doctor-patient confidentiality?
Yes. When I show this to you, if there is anything that may have been taken from Mr. Driscoll's possessions upon his arrival, I'm not going to ask for them as evidence, but I would like you to corroborate whether or not he may have been in possession of something similar to or like what I'm going to show you. So I pull it out and I just plainly put it on the table. It's a small figurine recovered from a crime scene of a friend of mine.
Okay. It doesn't look particularly upsetting, does it?
To someone like myself, no, but apparently to someone in Mr. Driscoll's condition, it does. Which lets me know that he must have some kind of familiarity with who, or, and I put the emphasis on what, this may represent.
Well, it's very, very helpful. And as for his personal effects, I'm given to understand, other than his wallet and keys, he really didn't have anything with him, and was in, with the exception of his head injury, was in otherwise fine condition. Oh, I should also say that when he was brought into the hospital, there had been some treatment started.
Like first aid or field medicine?
Something along those lines, yes. So I understand that the place where he was some sort of underground or unlicensed medical clinic.
That's interesting. You say it was underground?
You know, gangster mob doctors.
Oh, yes, yes. That is, given the information that's publicly available, yeah, that apparently is the location. You say he was brought in. Who brought him in? Was there anybody with him?
We can check the files. So he, kind of sweeps on down the hall and checks some charts.
Turn to Tyler. How does this track so far for you? What's your first initial observations?
I don't think that Mr. Driscoll would have reported what happened to him to the doctors or medical staff. So I'm thinking somebody dropped him off and explained.
I think that too. Whether or not we have any record of that, though, or someone who may be able to be a witness, that's definitely something to follow up on. So, depending on what the doctor comes back with, we may have to ask a few other questions to some other people. Just kind of, wait for the doctor to come back with any information he might have.
Well, whoever dropped him off, I'm awfully suspicious of the name John Smith.
I give a little chuckle. I say, yeah, it's a suspicious name. I kind of smile.
So a John Smith dropped off Mr. Driscoll. He was wearing a suit, not, considering the newspaper reports, a not significant amount of blood spattering, but before we knew about the massacre, a significant amount of blood spatter. And the injury was assessed as having been several days old, some kind of blunt force trauma to the back of the head. But
so would you say that they tried to take care of Mr. Driscoll at first, but then realized that he was beyond their capability?
I don't want to speculate. All I can say is that there was dried blood, much of which had been cleaned away, and access to the injury site through the hair had been undertaken, some shaving.
Okay.
But the treatment
of the wound
was not complete.
Yeah. The treatment of the wound, you say it was may have been attempted by someone familiar with medical procedures?
They started the same way I would have. And so all his personal effects are under seal for Lieutenant Gabriel Washburn, the detective.
I'm familiar with. Lieutenant Washburn and I have had conversations before. I appreciate you for letting me know that that his possessions are with him. Other than that, is there anything else you might be able to tell me about?
Yeah, I got a description of the John Smith. This is an individual, early 20s, late teens, pretty healthy, fairly well dressed, red hair, Irish.
Really? I put the figurine back in the Gladstone and kind of leaf through it a little bit. And pull out one of the earlier photos of, the fist that we have had of him, in the past. He's obviously had his photo taken. I pull the photo out, or pull the newspaper clipping out, and kind of put it on the table and say, would you say that the description, or if you could point us in the direction of someone who saw this person, Would you say that it might look like this gentleman only younger, possibly a relation?
Yeah,
Okay.
he signals. RN comes over. She's looking pretty harried, you know. And doctor, she checks through. It says, "No."
Okay. Thank you. No, I appreciate that. I think, unless there's any other questions you may have for me, Doctor, I don't want to go back in and disturb Mr. Driscoll any more than he already has been for today. Do you have any questions for me?
No, I don't. But if you do uncover more evidence like this, it may prove useful in his treatment if this trauma is as deep seated as this recent episode suggests.
And as we're kind of wrapping up our conversation, I'm putting everything back together into the Gladstone and say, well, you know what, I definitely will keep that in mind. Do you have anybody on staff who would be taking care of Mr. Driscoll in a mental facility, in a mental capacity?
No, we're waiting on experts to arrive. So, but we will notify the police department of the disposition of Mr. Driscoll.
Pulling out my wallet, I will say, I don't know how Mr. Driscoll is paying for his current medical status. Is that being taken care of or handled by someone?
I do not know, sir.
I pull out the card for my family's firm, which has my name on it, putting it down on the table and sliding it to him. I say, if in the event that Mr. Driscoll comes into, let's say, extraneous or stressful financial burden, then I would appreciate it if you would contact my office here at my family's firm.
That's very generous, sir. I'll make sure he understands that, or I will certainly append it to his file.
Once you are able to decide on someone who may be to take care of further care for Mr. Driscoll, if you would please pass that information on to me to at least let me know who the doctor would be that would be seeing to his care.
Right. So then he clearly wants to get back to work.
Yeah. And I've kind of wrapped everything up, putting the card on the table. Is the last conversation I have with him. And I say, doctor, I really do apologize for interrupting your day. And I'm saying this as we're kind of walking towards the door, I'm looking over my shoulder, at kind of Tyler to see, kind of what his expression is on his face as I'm looking around to the rest of the hospital, still blank as a fucking board. Nice. As we are making our way through the hospital and getting on our way to the exit, I am going to try and make any observation for someone who is not a member of staff, who may be here as a visitor and may be observing our movements through the hospital. Back out to the car. Once we get into the car, and the door's shut, say, so what do you think about the conversation? And starting the car up and backing up out of the parking space.
I don't know. I mean,
you drawing a blank?
Any experience that would make a grown man behave that way? Like shell shock or battle fatigue.
Shell shock and battle fatigue would definitely be two very specific forms of trauma which would cause a man to react in that way. But he reacted when specifically shown the idol. So there is definitely some connection between his trauma and whatever that idol represents.
And what he said specifically when you showed him the figurine was, "Please don't kill me."
Do you think whoever he may have been saying that to at the time, in theory, do you think that that might have been somebody that he could have pleaded with and that's why he is alive? I know it's speculation, but just run with me here.
He has to associate the figurine with lethal violence. So this would be what? Seeing the figurine at the time of the violence, or the figurine is associated thoroughly with the person who perpetrated, or at least ordered, the violence.
So he's saying this as we're kind of pulling out into traffic, and I kind of look over at him and say, well, your philosophy education's paying off pretty well as far as logic goes. That's almost something I would have expected to come out of one of my professor's voice mouths at Harvard. Not bad for someone who stopped those courses. Do you think you might be willing to have your philosophical beliefs challenged even more as I start pulling out and going into traffic?
Well, I just would like to clarify one point that I think a lot of Harvard professors are Princeton educated, but
I will openly laugh.
But I hate puzzles. So we have to turn this into a known quantity, or I'm not going to be able to get any sleep.
Obsession is something that could drive you to your detriment,
I fixate with great attention on not becoming obsessive.
Are you sure it's not already happened? So I'm kind of pulling up to one of the stoplights and looking over at him. How about we get some coffee after that? Just kind of stop off, get a little bite to eat for lunch, continue, just kind of me feeling him out a little bit more through conversation and his education before we get back to the office.
Right. Well, he is a subtle wit. And prefers to observe.
Does he carry his education and knowledge well? Meaning that when you say subtle wit, do I get the feeling from him that he is someone who will think deeply on a subject and not just jump to a conclusion?
Yeah.
Okay.
Now, as for what Winchester had said about complaining, there are signs of that as well. Like in the restaurant, he cleans his own silverware on his napkin, and he just never is comfortable in any chair that you've seen him sitting in. He doesn't heave a sigh. He doesn't talk about the furniture, but he is obviously suppressing his frustration at
the state of the world around him.
Yes, things not fitting, right?
Okay.
And that hints toward that interest in discipline and controlling his environment and the military way of life. If he doesn't have hospital corners, neatly done in his room and being able to, bounce a coin off of his off of his cot, it would be a surprising thing. So yeah,
Okay.
he complains, but not verbally, at least not to you.
So, okay, yeah. Is his distress and discomfort about the silverware, maybe the state of his table? He's probably one of these people who, when he did sit down, he arranged the menu and glass, and so he set up order in the chaos.
Yeah, but it's more the table rocks. And that's the problem. Not where the water glass is, not where the cutlery is. It's the condition of the cutlery. It's the cleanliness of the water glass. It's the stability of the table. It's the size of the chair.
I gotcha. Okay. Once we get back to the office, as we're walking down the hallway towards where we're at, I'm going to turn to Tyler and say, look, I want you to, from your notes and everything that you've kind of been working on, what you know about the territory and everything down there, I want you to go ahead and extrapolate that out. Any resources or any information files that we have inside the office, you have probably good access to. Kyle is probably already working on files from the actual massacre site. So anything we can dredge up from there, which may form connections with Driscoll, the O'Shaughnessy's, the Gavigans, the books, and as a long shot, the Morgan Company. This is the kind of puzzle I would like and appreciate your help on, especially when it comes to your observations about Driscoll, his mannerisms, his reaction. Don't leave anything out. I would expect any kind of candor to be included in your report.
Okay, I'll put it all in.
So as we're walking to the office, I'm looking around for Bill.
Bill's where Bill always is.
I set my bag down at the door, let Tyler come in and do whatever he's going to get started in on, check in and see where Kyle's at and how he's progressing. And I make my way over to Bill's desk and I kind of move my sleeve up a little bit. I go, look, Bill, see, we managed to get that done with plenty of time left for the date. No problems at all. I don't see anything going wrong today. For once.
Knight in shining armor.
As I'm walking over to my desk, I say, Bill, please don't. Bill, I feel like too much.
There's a bunch of messages on your desk.
Okay. I will sit down, at my own desk, let Bill go do what he's doing, start peeling through the messages that I've gotten. Anything stand out?
Alex, why didn't you tell me that in addition to being, one of the hoity-toity rich Thorntons, that you are also related to the most important Thorntons in Boston?
I kind of look up at
the message on the top, like one of those nail spikes messages. The message on the top is from your aunt and uncle, who own Thornton's restaurant.
I'm sorry, Bill. I just kind of thought, the association with my father's accounting firm, the Thornton name it's not the name to associate with Boston, and I'm trying to drag my heels on this. I mean, we get around.
Well, anyway, that's a great restaurant. And I just never would have associated those down-to-earth people with, you.
I know. Harvard education and all. But look at where I hang out, Bill. Okay? I'm down at the gym. I box with the rest of the guys. I go to the diner. I kind of shrug my shoulders. Do you kind of see why I'm here and not at the accounting firm.
Good food. Now everything clicks.
I are you trying to hit it? Do you have a place picked out yet?
No, we have a place picked out. I told you we're going to the
You got a
Italian
place
place in
picked out.
my
I was
neighborhood.
okay. I was unsure.
But for lunch sometime.
So what is, as he's saying this, I'm looking at the message from my aunt and uncle. I mean, what is it? What is the actual message?
The message is from your aunt, who is asking you to please come by as soon as possible.
Okay. What time we got? Is it almost lunchtime?
Yeah, almost lunchtime, in the sense that lunchtime has passed.
Okay. Well, because I mean, Tyler showed up at 10, so we've spent roughly about 2 hours between there and here. Looking at the rest of the message, is anything else important in the rest of the stack, or is it just
No, it's
general office communications?
The receipt of the files, and they've been
Gotcha.
offloaded and that sort of stuff.
So as Bill is kind of saying, hey, lunch would be great. I say, I'm kind of tucking the note into my breast pocket and look out the windows and say, well, Bill, I don't know if I've ever seen you out of this office before, so why don't we get a late lunch? And I look over at Kyle and Tyler and say, why don't we let these guys take care of things for a minute? And you and I can get out of the office for a second. We go have a lunch. I've got to go by there anyway. And it's not very often that my aunt and uncle really get in contact with me. So obviously this is pretty important. What do you say?
I like the cut of your jib.
All right. Get ourselves together. Let Tyler and let those guys know, hey, you've got your assignments. Just stay occupado. And Bill and I smile, we're going to go have a late lunch.
So Bill's actually quite excited because a lot of the hesitation about standing up is absent. It's still difficult. He still has to lever himself out of the chair. But, he steps carefully around the desk. Then once he's free of those obstructions like the waste can and the door and whatnot, he walks much more naturally, if a little
uneven. How long you had that prosthetic, Bill? As we're kind of making our way down to the car.
Since the war.
Don't they have anything more comfortable for you to wear?
This is the most comfortable thing.
Okay. All right. Get the car. Head to the aunt and uncle's place.
That's right.
Now, when we get there, Bill, try not to overreact, okay? We're just here for a late lunch.
Overreact? Me?
I mean, I know they've got a good reputation as a great place to eat, okay?
Yeah. Yeah. I love chowder.
Pull into the parking lot, make our way up to the host, through the front doors and up to the hostess stand.
Right. Which is also the cash register.
Yeah. Atypically, yeah.
So, we're not too far from the Boston Public Library and the beating heart of downtown industry. Sidewalks have been stripped of the remaining snow, and the late lunch crowd is much smaller than the lunch crowd, but the place is still almost full.
Okay.
So people are lined up at, on the bar stools, at the counter, and the booths around the edges are almost all full, and all of the scattered tables, the twos and the fours or sixes are all mostly full, but there are places, right? And the waitress sees you and smiles. She doesn't say your name or anything like that because she doesn't know who you're with. And she says, "Welcome back. It's been so long. How about, is there more to your party?"
No, just the two of us. And, I got a message from my aunt saying that I needed to come by ASAP. And, well, let me introduce you to my boss. This is Bill. Bill. And I look at her name tag. This is Mary. Stella. If you could just go ahead and, seat us wherever you got space, and let my aunt or uncle know that I managed to get down here as soon as I could, as soon as I got their message. If it's something that they don't feel like saying in front of a guest, then, let them know I don't mind coming back to the office.
Yes. Just head on back to the office, and they'll be very happy to see you. And I'll bring out the menus for your boss.
And I, walk to the table with Bill. Let it. Hopefully, this will just be a few minutes. And
Bill is flushed red. All this attention.
Take your time. Order whatever you want. And I just say, me, I know the chowder is good, but here I've always liked a nice tomato soup, a grilled cheese sandwich, and a small glass of milk. So I'll just be a few minutes, then make my way back to their office.
So like you can hear Bill getting himself back as you're creating distance on your way to the back of the restaurant, as he explains it's terrible what a Harvard education does to a man's palate. So you have to, pass down a narrow corridor, and the kitchen action is bustling off to the side. But
go by the dish stand.
Yeah, but at the back is the office, and standing in the doorway is your aunt. Right, just a little crack. She's like looking down the hallway. She sees you. She opens the door, so she steps back to invite you in.
I will lean over, give her a hug. I say, I apologize for staying away for so long. The office has got us busy. Dad's got me busy.
And that's when you notice there's a third man in the room. And he's got this posture. "Step in, Mr. Thornton," he says. "Close the door."
I step in, close the door.
You're looking at the spitting image of the very first mugshot of Mickey the Fist O'Shaughnessy.
It's been a long time, Mickey. Where have you been? I was kind of wondering when somebody from your family might start catching up to me.
Your aunt and uncle were kind enough to be hospitable while I waited for you to eventually answer their call.
I'm sure you know I've been a little busy, right?
Yeah, I think you have something of mine.
Something of yours? This is the first time you and I have ever talked. What do I have that's yours?
Something you picked up off a floor in a place you shouldn't have been.
A friend's house, right?
Not my friend. It shouldn't have been yours.
That's debatable. There's only one problem. And I'm sure you're going to tell me that my aunt needs to stay here and you're going to use her as collateral while I go all the way back to the office with my boss and retrieve this for you. Coming down here wasn't a business trip. This was family.
The look on his face. This is the famous fury of the fist. He's so angry at you, at them, the world, himself. He literally stamps his foot like he's 8. You don't have it?
It's not like a favorite child's toy of the day that I'm carrying around with me. It is, after all, evidence.
I need it.
And I kind of look at my aunt and I say, I kind of need my family to stay alive. If anything happens to her or to someone else that's a family relation, it's going to make it even harder for me to get a hold of.
You can see the gears turning, but they're not all engaged.
Mr. O'Shaughnessy, and I slowly bring my hands up. Mr. O'Shaughnessy, I can see that you're under a lot of distress, that this is very important to you. Can you put the gun down? Can you put the gun away? You're making my aunt a little nervous.
He puts it in his pocket, and he's just seething. I don't like them anyway.
If we're going to talk about this, is this something that you want my aunt to know about? And I kind of look at my aunt and say, I apologize, aunt. You know, this gentleman, I didn't know that it belonged to him. It was a friend of mine's house and I picked it up. I apologize for bringing business like this into your house. I kind of look back at O'Shaughnessy and say, if you and I need to conduct business, can we do it in a more civil manner? And here I'm really trying to watch him. I am trying to lean on my ability to observe his state of mind and attempt to persuade him into letting my aunt out of the room. That is my goal, is to negotiate this hostage situation.
Right. You don't have it. And it's in your office.
It's at the Treasury Department. I know that that's frustrating for you. Meanwhile, I'm trying to keep the anger off of my face that this, of all places, is where the confrontation has to happen.
So he's fidgeting, he's clenching his fists, he's not able to articulate.
How about this? Is there a place, because I'm sure you don't want to come down to the Treasury office with me, am I right?
Yeah, you're right.
Is there a place where you and I could meet and exchange information away from, and I kind of look at my aunt, civilian eyes?
Civilians. It doesn't matter about the civilians. It just matters about... Persuade.
Seeing his distress and keening in on his desire to have this object. I mean, it's a success. It's under. I provide for him every opportunity to establish the location and the time of the exchange, somehow convincing him and making him comfortable with dealing with me as an officer of the law.
You read my files.
Who hasn't in law enforcement? I mean, your family's
Fine.
pretty popular here in Boston, right?
Then you know my church. So you give it to the Father. He'll make sure I get it.
I'll agree to that. Can you help me out with one thing, though? I know where the church is at. I can find that. What is it?
What is it?
And at this
Front
point,
page news, buddy boy. It's front page news.
At this point, what I'm trying to do is, I'm moving around, trying to get my aunt room. I am getting her out of the room so that he and I can talk in private.
Yeah, and his gloating allows that to happen.
Is this all part of that massacre?
Your aunt, powerful woman that she is, doesn't want to go too far down the hallway. She wants to be out of that office.
Mm-hmm.
Right. But
she's a
doesn't
Thornton.
want to
She's
take
not
her
going to
eyes
give up.
off you. Yeah.
She's a Thornton. She's not going to give up total control over the situation. Does this have to do with that massacre?
She's like snapping her fingers.
Still working the window from all the way back here. Does this have to do with that massacre?
Has everything to do with the massacre.
Does this have to do with the Morgans?
It's my revenge. It's our revenge. You don't want them running the city any more than I do.
I kind of get the feeling you're trying to pull the friend of my enemy. How does that thing go? You know what I mean? I never really got that. You say
you can't trust him. He's full of promises. All the promises are lies.
How do you know they're lies? Have you seen it?
What do you know about me? I love life, right? I love good food, I love pretty girls, right? I love the attention, cameras. I love to smash a man and make him cry, let him know who's the real boss. He took all of that from me.
If you don't mind me saying, though, you do look an awful younger than what you used to be. If anything, I'd say this is your first mugshot face.
Yeah, I'm younger. You think you're tough? Huh? Come here. Feel my ticker.
The corner of my mouth goes up and I say, I kind of already have an idea of what I'm going to find out.
Feel it. Come on.
I put my hand on his chest.
There is no heartbeat. And it's not possible. He only breathes to speak.
I say, you're like Malone, huh? But Malone doesn't look younger.
He snaps. His hands come up. He's faster than he looks. He pushes against the wall. What do you know about Malone?
Say Malone was waiting for me at my house one day. He didn't look like he was breathing either. I kind of, as I'm coming off of the wall, I'm trying to straighten myself up, but I've got my hands not in a guard position, but as a boxer, I know to be ready to, if I have to. And I'm saying, he was waiting for me in my driveway one day. I just happened to notice it was still cold that day. He had no hot breath coming out of his mouth.
He
didn't believe it at first.
Right. And he knocks the lamp off the desk. Right. kicks a box on the floor.
I'm kind of having my hands out, try to get him to calm down, not to wreck my aunt's office. I say, don't start the fit here. If you want my help, then we got to work together. Can we do that? If I give this thing back to you, can you get me on the inside? Can you help me understand what's going on? Otherwise, I'm not going to stop digging.
Understand what's going on. Gotta dig. Gotta get involved. You want to know about Morgan?
I kind of, my eyes go a little wide, and my head is nodding. Yes. I want to know about Morgan. And since you showed me something, hopefully this is going to serve you to go into a fit. I pull the tie, flip the collar, undo the top button. And I say, this isn't for a little boys play or anything. And I'm not normally the kind of guy who has a tattoo. I start unbuttoning the shirt. I take it down just far enough. I look inside to see if the tattoo is there.
And it is. It comes charging forward across your chest. And at that moment,
hopefully,
it's too much.
Hopefully I'm getting the shirt open so he can see the tattoo move is what I'm hopefully trying to do. Yeah.
Yes.
Oh no, buddy. This is in my family's restaurant. This is my house. I own this place. My family owns this place. This guy is a dead man walking. So with the staunchness and sternness of a knight on horseback, I just look him in the face and say, I am the knight. I will see this through.
And he goes, you are a pawn. And he loses it. That very famous left, that brutal right. But worst of all is the many-mouthed, elongating tongue.
Holy
close the curtain. There.
Okay. Yeah. That's quality, man. That's quality. I like that. I knew at some point it was going to come to a head. No idea where, no idea what time.
So let me tell you a story. Long, long ago, last year, in fact, you sent me the several versions of Alex Thornton.
Yeah.
And included in that file were things like your house and its proximity to Harvard and stuff like that. And I thought, I really like this level of detail, right? So I looked for a period map of, street map of Boston and whatnot. And I didn't really find one that I liked. So hopefully someone out there could recommend a good 1930s street map of Boston that I could make use of. But I'm looking at this map of Boston. I'm zooming in, and I get to the point where individual buildings start to resolve. And the building right in the center of the screen is Thornton's Family Restaurant.
Not say anything, but you probably were looking at the same maps that I was. And that's actually where I got the name. No intention of there being any connection to that. But Thornton just struck me as when I looked for names that related to the Boston area, Alex definitely was a name that came up as a common name that babies were being named during the period. And Thornton was a name that was known in that background. Being a dilettante, I did want to go ahead and try and have some form of connection to the Boston area. But yeah, did you look at any of the modern maps for Boston, like the Google Maps nowadays?
Yeah.
Did you actually take a look at the house? Because that's where I got the picture of the house from. Number 38.
I found the house. Yeah. And
just down the street from Harvard.
And I managed to find some art of a similar house in the winter that has popped up in
nice.
of the things. But
that's a very common house too. Yeah, very common style, that right. L-shaped front porch, walk up, raised basement type of setup that you would normally see. Driveway all the way down the side, detached garage in the backyard.
Yeah, love it. Also, Thornton, right, is John Wayne's very famous character in The Quiet Man, Sean Thornton.
I did not make any connection. That didn't pop up for me.
Who is a retired boxer who retires from the ring because he killed a man. And it's a great film. So, yeah. And people who have watched the other series will be nodding their heads because they know how and why Mickey the Fist ended up at this restaurant.
Well, it's nice to have some type of connection, like going and talking to Eddie Driscoll, and Driscoll is a part of both stories so far that have occurred. So it's nice to have these points of crossover for it. Really, to me, it helps to solidify the environment, the time frame, the era, how the two separate groups are going about their business.
Right.
And it definitely sets it in time. What was I going to say? The car for me was one of the hardest things to find, is to find a car that was just not your standard black.
Right.
So
that was just in the early 20s that they were all black. But
but by the time you get to the 1930s, so when your comment was, you got your choice of every color, including black, that's pretty much what every vehicle looked like. For me, as a player, having the fight take place in the office of a restaurant, for me as a player, almost seems very fitting. given my history as a person involved in the restaurant industry for so long.
Yeah, I'm sure you can imagine it. This crappy office in the back.
I know exactly what this whole setup looks like.
Yeah.
The office is like this wide, and you're looking right down the line.
Wine cases and
stuff all over the place.
Yeah.
So how do you, from last session, how do you feel that we have progressed in the trade-off of interaction between player and keeper? How do you feel like we have progressed from the last session that we had? Because this one feels like there was not only more character and NPC interaction, but a more diverse range as we've played more and given the idea of how this whole thing started. I am most interested in what your perspective is on playing from that character level and seeing how much we did that in the previous session, because we had a few characters that were NPCs that were introduced during that. But I think in this one, there was definitely a increase in the cast of characters overall who were seen across the session, from Driscoll, Tyler, Kyle, Bill, the aunt's just there. She's kind of a figure. but there were definitely more personas that had to become more present.
Right.
So on your end, is it, when you're having to go through that, is it as challenging as the GM to get that sense of playing as character when you have to task switch to so many?
In this context, no, this is really comfortable. If, I don't know, you were leading a team to raid a speakeasy or something, and we had to do, and we decided to do lots of combat. It wasn't all right, come out with your hands up, or kind of thing. If we went in and actually shot the place up, I think it would be more difficult to give these characters nuance, because they, in my mind, they would be putting on a front anyway.
Yeah.
Right. But we have lots of really interesting context in this happening in the office, right? Maybe people can overhear. The walls are paper thin in parts of the office, right? Maybe there would be gossip, and I've never really spoken to this agent before, and I don't really know my position yet, and I don't really understand how this office works, and I'm not even really sure that I trust this whole Bureau of Prohibition anyway, right? There's a whole lot of interesting stuff, and then we've got these 3 guys who all went to university, which is really rare, and they all went to famous universities. So there's that, and then there's this Bill in the middle, right? Who's obviously very smart, who obviously does lots of research, who obviously has a pretty intimate understanding of every piece of paper in that office, right? And yet seems to be kind of a humorous, laughable, self-deprecating character. Oh, yeah. What's going on there? So what's he like to work for? So there's a lot of interesting stuff there. And then, as a keeper of arcane lore, if you go into this with the mindset that I'm presenting a mystery for you to solve, and I will make sure there are clues in front of you to, then this kind of stuff would never happen.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or at least not like this. Right. So, I got to, thankfully, one at a time, in most of the scenes, portray these characters and interact with you as Alex in the way that Alex wanted to interact with them. So I'm hoping that experience of meeting these people was an enjoyable play experience for you.
Oh, it definitely was. I mean, and as a player, looking at it from Alex's perspective, not being too familiar with both of the guys in the bullpen, hearing what Kyle said about, going, he never mentioned where he graduated from or really talked about where he went to school.
Right.
And that he went there on scholarship. Yeah, he had just applied. He went there on scholarship. So once I heard Princeton, it became this idea that, okay, I want to see how these 2 office associates who've been in the bullpen together for a while, A is saying this about B. This is what Kyle is saying about Tyler. Let's see what Tyler's really like. Let's see how Tyler reacts to, is he the kind of guy who's going to get upset because he went to Princeton, and this other guy who's been with us for a shorter amount of time is getting the leg up? Does Tyler feel like he's not been given a shot yet? And so that was, from Alex's point of view, it was very purposeful. From a player's point of view, and this is why I don't know, I kind of vacillate between those two. From a player's point of view, I don't want you to have to talk to yourself,
right,
as a GM. And so it's also very purposeful to try and help construct how this scene will evolve,
right,
and say, I really do want to isolate Tyler and get to know Tyler a little better. Unfortunately, the late lunch is now interrupted, so I don't get to see Bill outside of work yet unless I live through this thing.
Right.
Who knows?
Who knows?
Not yet. But it's also very purposeful. So for me, it's kind of a way to go into just let go, let things evolve as they're going to come along. But it's also like, I, as a player, want to see what this looks like. Let me lean towards that direction. And first asking, is that direction that Alex wants to lean? I'm not going to try and do something completely outside his personality, like, oh, I don't know, just all of a sudden decide to burst into my dad's boardroom office and confront him about, the problems we have as a family.
Right.
That's not how Alex would go about it,
Right. So there's that. So hearing the question, right, it makes me think of people playing the game with a different intention.
Yeah.
Right? And the advice we normally hear about things like, maintaining pacing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Pacing across, the unfolding of a campaign and pacing through a session where things, have to happen. And so you have things like phone calls, you have things like interruptions and whatnot, which it can certainly look on the outside like I'm doing. Right, you get back to the office, there's a phone call from your aunt.
Yeah.
Right. And how does that all, happen? And if you have the whole picture of play, it's pretty obvious how that happens. But but all those sessions are not up on.
Oh yeah,
online
yeah.
Yet.
There's still more to go up. The reason why I ask is because I've been looking a lot at troop play. So not just the idea that you're going to select a character, but that you have a cadre of characters who that will surge forward to be the primary, let's say, focus of a session or a series of sessions for a while. Meanwhile, in the background, you have these other characters that are in your cadre, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they stand still in the background. Right. There are things that still happen with them. And this moving back and forth between, those two groups. It's just, and then to put it in context, how do you play in character as character when, like today, how many NPCs did we go through? Even ones that we had seen before and new ones that actually did more than just my aunt, who we didn't really have any interaction with. She is here, but we're yet to see anything true about her yet, other than her and my uncle own the family restaurant.
Right.
So what do you think? There was like maybe 6, 7 characters to go through?
Guess so. Yeah.
How difficult or easy, even given the comfort of the style of play, your familiarity with the system, how easy do you think it was to hop in and quickly form or go back to, say, Bill, because he's fairly established now. I keep really trying to keep Bill established.
Bill's very easy for me to adopt because he's one of those lightning in a bottle moments where the character on paper, the character that I saw in the numbers, is not the character that I portrayed. Like, his abilities are the same, but a completely different insight into what those numbers represent is what manifested in play. So he's kind of imprinted on me.
How does that compare to someone like
Kyle?
Yeah, that's
Tyler were ideas in case they were necessary, like going on a raid or needing backup or whatever, right? Because there was a reason, which I was keeping close to my chest, why Bill doesn't leave the office. Right. and something that Alex knows, but that, doesn't ever get talked about.
Yeah.
So Tyler and Kyle are kind of like Bill in that they're numbers on a sheet, and I have this idea of a potential relationship hook between them, which is their various backgrounds and how really, really similar they are, and how that would drive them both nuts. Tall, healthy, young, muscular, adventurous, good schools, but got there on a scholarship.
Yeah.
Right, kind of thing, and not too certain about where they're working. Right, in a really corrupt city. Am I doing some good, or am I a part of the problem? If I do some good, am I just putting a target on my back? This kind of thing. Can I trust this guy who embodies all the things I hate about myself? So I had this kind of in mind, but I didn't have any faith that would actually come out in play, either because of an experience like I had with Bill, like they would strike me differently as I portrayed them.
Mm.
And whatever scene that they were brought into, right? So I really liked Kyle Winchester when you brought him onto the scene of the murder investigation of Steve Alwell. I really
the timing on that was pretty appropriate, because at that point, I mean, Alex is starting to get in over his head. He's going too many places. He's got too many things to take care of. He's going to need help eventually.
Right. And so how this character manifested separate from Tyler, I thought, I kind of like this guy. And I'm pretty sure that influenced how Tyler is, right? And how these two guys who should get along really don't.
Not everybody's going to be friendly.
Yeah.
I did like Tyler's, like when he asked the question, he went to Miskatonic University, like, oh my God, all of a sudden I'm supposed to, he's kind of a shady guy.
And he didn't sir with that either. Like it slipped out. Like
and really with Kyle, Kyle, there was a light amount of interaction there, but not as focused as I was on trying to get Tyler involved. I mean, with Tyler, I was really, me as a player, I was like trying to grill you, like, who is this guy? He's definitely an unknown. What's he bitching about? And is he going to be worth? Because if it's all about trusting someone, right, in this corrupt city, at least Kyle showed up when I needed someone. This guy's coming in late. What's his story? Is he committed?
Right. Although Bill is implying that he's not coming in late, he's coming in early.
Yeah. Well, no, not Tyler, or not Kyle. Tyler from Kyle's perspective. Yeah.
Kyle says he's coming in late. Bill says he's coming in early.
Yeah.
I work nights. I work all night. I came in at 10 o'clock in the morning before working all night.
Before working all night, yeah. But there was definitely a lot more grilling of that NPC.
Yeah.
About, let's get you established. I don't want to say that was purposeful, but for Alex to be able to rely on another member in the office, it's definitely something he had to do. And having a third party while interviewing Driscoll, I know Alex felt was very important, because he was going to have to focus on trying to ask the questions, trying to get Driscoll to talk and not be distracted by note taking. And so the opportunity was it just clicked.
Right.
Here's this guy in the bullpen. We're moving Kyle into the office. Okay, let's give Tyler the opportunity to show what, makes him shine.
Right. And I also had in the back of my head that, there are other Treasury agents, such as Kyle Winchester and Tyler Prince. But if another player joined, kind of.
Oh yeah.
So if Tyler had not shown up today, but a new player joined and wanted to be a Treasury agent, then Tyler never would have joined. Whatever character they created would have joined instead. That kind of thing. Yeah. So then we have the horror.
Yep. I was pretty sure that Malone was dead. I was pretty sure from the inclination I got from the kids that if Mickey was not the same, not knowing about the horror part of it, but at least knowing the undead part of it, that they were somehow the same. How he got younger, still haven't established how that happened yet, but I'm still interested to hear how that happened. Again, it's another one of those things where I was wondering when it was going to show. Because we've kind of danced around it. The actual presence of a Lovecraftian element has been there. It's kind of been in the background. The closest to it so far has been Xavier.
Right.
A little bit of sleight of hand and tarot that happened there. The tattoo, these things are the ones that are present for me, unlike the other group who's probably actually seen some real stuff. This is the first time when it comes in here, and it didn't feel like it was inappropriate, untimed. It wasn't we need to include, Shoggoth here, so let's throw a Shoggoth in over here. Let's have an encounter type thing. When I heard the word initiative come out of your mouth, I was like, oh, crap.
Did I say initiative? There is no initiative.
Well, I know, but I heard the word initiative, not as in, okay, it's time for combat, but like in the general way you would say, he takes the initiative too, or does that. But that's where my mind went, was like, oh, the horror tongue comes out of his mouth, and it's like, okay, yeah, is he going to end it here, or are we going to actually see, Alex try and fight this thing in close quarters? Is this when Alex pulls his gun and draws and, shoots?
Yeah, so it's something to consider in the the week between sessions. But I just stopped there because I looked down and saw that it was after 2 a.m, so I should probably stop it there. But because I forget when we started, so I don't know how long this session actually is. But
for me, that would have been 7:30-ish, a little bit after 7:30. So I don't know what that would have been there for your time. But it's 11:30 now for me, so that's like 3 hours roughly. So
that's
minus the chit chat.
Lengthy. Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's a pretty good session, especially for a solo session.
Yeah. Yeah. So we had I'm not sure what you learned from Edward Driscoll, and I'm not sure what you've gleaned from Mickey the Fist. And I'm not sure if you'll survive your gleaning with Mickey the Fist.
My experience with the horror.
Yeah.
I mean, aside from what may come out of any notes or anything that Tyler's point of view may add to or take away from, Alex believes that, Driscoll, whatever Driscoll saw was real. He believes it wholeheartedly, 100%. There's no way it wouldn't have traumatized him as bad as it did to have such a reaction to an inanimate, small, what Alex would consider inane or mundane object.
Right.
There's definitely something that it represents that caused the trauma.
Right.
The fact that he's still alive is something that Alex is willing to invest in because he needs to know more what could cause that kind of trauma. So there is still questions about, what is it that you saw? Can you tell me without freaking the freak out, that he wants to get from Driscoll? And more importantly, it's obvious there were other people involved. So as a Treasury agent, as someone who has to do the investigation, these are now more leads for me to try and track down. So it establishes the fact that there is something horrific that has connected the events with the books, their importance to the massacre, and his involvement and ongoing involvement, I should say, his ongoing involvement. With the horror, if Alex survives, it verifies the fact that this is beyond mortal means. This is something other. It's anathema, right? It may verify the carnage seen at the crime scene, depending on what happens, if I get ripped to shreds or if I survive it somehow. Notice how I'm actually saying I, as in Brian, if I survive that now when talking about Alex. But that it is, that there is, and when he says you're just a pawn, that lets me know, or lets Alex know, that there is a difference between these two camps still. That the Morgans and the O'Shaughnessy's are two different parties. And how he reacts to Malone's name kind of makes Alex believe that if I am a pawn, then how is Malone involved with the Morgans? Because he didn't seem very friendly with Malone's name.
Right. Betrayed,
yeah. And once I was able to get my aunt out of the room, which was a very big initial goal, Alex's next goal was to try and get something from the Fist. This is the first time I've been face to face with an O'Shaughnessy. The ghost one, unfortunately, is the one I'm dealing with. And negotiating for information and material evidence, right? I'm going to give up a piece of evidence to get inside. So there was for Alex, there was a moral choice to be made. Do I allow my aunt to see that I am willing to become compromised by giving this up and gaining something? Is that something I want to keep? And so the choice was, I've got to get her out of the room so she doesn't understand what I am doing behind the scenes, right? Because now I'm keeping this from, well, Bill's, I don't know, depending on what's going to happen, Bill's going to find out about the whole shebang here in a minute. Whatever goes down in the office. But I mean, I did get stuff from it. How it gets part of piecing a mystery together. This sounds important to me. It sounds important now. Maybe it will be proven important in the future, or maybe it proves to be something that was just interesting but not important to the end. You know, that's the point of going through an investigation, of hearing information. That's interesting. Oh, that's important. Oh, that's not important. So while it might not seem like I'm getting anything out of it, this has been a long time since I have taken session notes for 5 sessions. And today was like, okay, I need to start consolidating some of these names down in these locations so that I can reference them easier. Right. Because by session 5, going back to session 1, it was like, what was the name of the auction house family again? Was there a name of the auction house? Was it just the Gavigans? What was it? Right. You know?
Yeah. What was the connection between the Gavigans and the
What was the connection? Yeah. And so there was even questions about that today with Driscoll, you know, trying to eliminate information that I have or maintain its relevance to the current ongoing investigation.
Right.
So it does feel like
this is another important point, right? Because we talk about Call of Cthulhu as basically being a mystery game or being an investigation game. And I mean, we want to use the word mystery because there's stuff we don't know, and we want to use investigation because there's stuff we're trying to find out. But when I think our experience tells us that a mystery is, you know, a puzzle to be unraveled, who murdered Mr. Body.
Yeah.
You know, was it Colonel Mustard? You know, that kind of thing. That kind of mystery. Who stole the item? Who stole the item, and what are they going to use it for, and where? That kind of thing. But in this kind of campaign play, the investigation can really be the experience itself, right? There are things going on,
Yeah.
which I don't know about. The information is out there, but it's not a crime that I'm trying to solve or a theft that I'm trying to undo, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's a I've seen a problem, like I've heard the chanting in the mountains, or I've seen strange lights in the swamps, or you know, I've seen weird graffiti, you know, springing up in this part of town, which, because of, you know, what I know, triggers my suspicions. So
Yeah.
you know, and there's not a mystery to solve. There's information to be gained in order to enable action or give reason for inaction. And you know,
Yeah. I mean, even here there is a mystery there. It's still a mystery to me what Xavier's end game is. Right? I don't know what he really intends to do. The few snippets I get real quick from Mickey don't really illuminate any more than I've already had before, other than the fact that he is definitely appears to be the guy who is really pulling the strings. If he calls me a puppet, then that lets me know that Xavier is definitely the guy who has to be at the top. If not the top, then at the top somewhere.
right.
You know, what is he intending to do? And the fact that he is so positive for the community obfuscates any nefarious things that may be lying on the surface, right? He's such a positive influence to the community. He's doing all these jobs. He's bringing money in, everything that goes along with that. So for a player, I think the trap for Call of Cthulhu of falling into the let's play it like D&D syndrome, right? Where I need to get from event to combat to situation, event to combat to situation for it to be entertaining and enjoyable. You know, I think that's where some of the different ways to play COC have come along is how do we make it feel more like you are having to ask the questions, to go to places, to run down information, to help you be able to determine what may or may not be important for what's going on, right?
Right.
I the whole experience so far, 5 sessions in, I'm still enjoying.
Cool.
You know, I don't feel like you're throwing down a breadcrumb here and somehow leading me towards it. I mean, I am intentionally moving through the environment, purposely going to locations, knowing as a player at some point, I'm going to step on a landmine somewhere. I'm going to keep putting Alex out there into the field because that's what he wants to do. He wants to be, I won't call him a brick agent, you know, but he wants to be somebody on the ground doing the legwork, being involved with the investigation. The Treasury agency up until this point has felt like another accounting firm. All I'm doing is chasing down the money, right? We may be still putting criminals away, but I don't feel like I'm really doing the hard work. So by taking that, I'm just looking for and trying not to anticipate, oh, well, is today the session where I go to X location because that's where Anthony knows I'm going to go. And all of a sudden in the middle of the hospital, this is where we have the encounter with the horror that cannot be, or, you know, that kind of thing. And it definitely doesn't feel that way. And it doesn't feel like I'm going out of my way to try and make that happen either. I'm not trying to purposely.
Or that it's chasing you.
Yeah, or that it's chasing me. I mean, there is certainly, hopefully it's been demonstrated fairly well that Alex does feel that there is something watching. Whether that's, I don't know if it was just my neighbor smoking out by the tree next to his trash can, right?
or not. Yeah.
Or not. And I'm perfectly fine with leaving it that way. I mean, if I really wanted to be the jerk player, I would have immediately ran down the block and we would have found out. But that's not what Alex does, right? I mean, that's still going back to that our full intention of how we're trying to play this. That's not Alex. He may be an actionable character, but not in that outrageous of a sense.
Yeah, it
Plus, he's a nice.
it takes a lot of willpower to confront people.
And it's within, going back to that, you know, he is only a POW 8 character. While he may have some drive, there is still a line that Alex has a hard time pushing himself across, right? And I'm good. That's with the next session when we pick up. That's going to be an interesting line for Alex. Up until now, I've never had to pull a gun. Up until now, I've never had to get involved in a physical conflict. So now, what does Alex look like? And considering that I'm at a 34 sanity, even though I may have made this one, by the way, that was a 28 on my 34. Even though I made that one with a good margin, it still doesn't mean that Alex wouldn't do something that crosses the line in a fight, because now it's going to become a fight for survival. I mean, it would be one thing if I knew that Mickey was just another thug on the street and we were going to have a fist fight. This is obviously not a thug on a street.
Right. This guy's famous, for one.
Well, yeah. And, you know,
well,
coming
yeah,
out,
but even
there's that.
the tendril,
that's what I mean.
The tentacle,
the tentacle. Even though the
tongue,
sand check is
the tongue of many mouths.
You know,
but he's Mickey the Fist. He is renowned for beating people to death, and now he's young. He's still the same old Mickey, but now he's young. So that's a thing. Yeah, but yeah, the tongue thing part.
Well, I don't want to keep you up any longer than you might be. I know you said you're going to be available for several hours or so after that, but if it's starting to really kind of get late for you, anything else you kind of want to touch on for this last session?
I guess.
Anything you feel like I might have overlooked or missed that Alex I should have in my notes?
No, I don't think so. I mean, right? We've the one detail I wanted to mention earlier, we kind of blew past. I'm glad you asked, because it reminded me of it, and that we've passed the point where, like I asked you last time we played, do you feel like you have enough leads to follow, to learn the things that you want to learn, to answer the questions that you have? And you gave a whole long list of things that you had collected and were curious about. So we've passed the point of me needing to even think about driving things or dropping things into play, other than the timeline of events that NPC action, discovered by dice, is telling me is happening, right? So we're not following the logic of beats or number of sessions or number of hours of play. We're just following a logic of, on this date, this thing failed, or this thing was successful, or this thing was learned, or these people were seen, or whatever. Right? Mm-hmm. And so when we reach that point in time, if Alex is in its vicinity and could conceivably encounter it, he might.
Okay.
So there are lots of things that you could have done with today's session, right? And we might never have gotten to the aunt's phone call, which takes place in the afternoon of Friday the 13th of November 1931, because that's when Mickey's able to show up at Thornton's family restaurant.
At least if anything happens, Bill will know that I didn't cop out and make any type of excuse for not being able to make the date on Friday the 13th.
He didn't want to go on this date so badly, he got himself killed.
Yeah.
And ruined my favorite restaurant to boot.
Yeah. Just totally changed Bill's point of view about the Thornton family.
That's right. All right. Good work. Good play. Good fun.
No,
Thank you very
appreciate
much.
it. Thank you so much for continuing to run. I really do appreciate it.
Awesome. I will talk to you soon.
Peace. Have a good morning.